Welcome to Long Blue Leadership, where we explore the lessons of leadership through the lives and stories of Air Force Academy graduates. I'm your host, Naviere Walkewicz, class of '99. When Rebecca Gray walked into her first duty station after graduating from the academy, she thought she was ready to lead. But it wasn't a general, a colonel, or a policy manual that changed her view of leadership. It was a senior master sergeant named Patrick J. Kennedy and a coffee cup.
He said, "You're doing this all wrong. You need to be out, out, out." He told me to go grab a coffee cup. I didn't drink coffee at the time. So he goes, "Go get some water, stop being difficult." And he walked me around and said, this is what matters. You got to know who people are so that you know how to relate to them. That really shaped me.
That simple moment became the foundation for how Rebecca has led her teams ever since. From the Air Force to corporate boardrooms, from public service to private equity. Rebecca Gray, USAFA class of '94, has led across nearly every domain, active duty, reserve, and guard, and built a remarkable second career spanning nonprofit work, education, and now executive leadership. Her path has been shaped by transformational moments that taught her how to connect, to trust herself, and to lead with conviction. Rebecca, welcome to Long Blue Leadership.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just a privilege to be here. Thank you for what you're doing for the grads, for the parents, for alumni, all of that. It's really impressive.
Oh gosh, really appreciate that. And I think, that clip was so wonderful to hear. And I think we should just jump right in to that moment in time, kind of winding back the clock when you were just really transformed in your leadership style by your senior enlisted leader. Can we talk about that?
I was had just graduated, and as you said, my first duty assignment, and the only officer in the shop. And so senior master sergeant, which is one rank below chief, so one of the top senior enlisted advisors in my shop, and we went for a walk, and he really just taught me how to connect with the troops, to connect with people, walk around, get to really know them. And I'll have to tell you, the first time I did it, I did a pass through. I went through the motions, if you will.
Hmm.
And, I came back, I was like, "Oh, okay, I did it, I'm good, and have done my leadership duty for the day." And he asked me, he said, "Who got a new car?" And I mentioned the airman's name of who got a new car. He goes, "What color was the car, and what was the type of car?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "So you didn't really care?" And I thought that's true. That's actually, accurate. I needed to really care about what his first car was, and was it a truck? Was it a sedan? What was it? And so that really shaped me into really caring in a way that's already in your heart, but how do you express that in a leadership capacity? And so that changed the course of my 30 plus years in the military and then in corporate.
What a powerful story. I mean, we can actually visualize you walking around. And as, graduates, we are kind of like, task minded. We're going to get this done. And you did it, you checked the box. But to go down that next level, how do you see that actually becoming actionable across, all leadership levels, where you're actually walking the walk with your troops, so to speak? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Well, I think you have to be authentic and be your authentic, be authentic in your heart and what you're really doing. And if you don't have that, then people can feel it. People can tell if they don't feel your connection or your care or concern for them. I think that really just mirrored an opportunity for me to put the two together. And to your point, we're very task minded, results driven when you graduate, very results driven. It still impacts me every day to be results. But we're doing it alongside of other people who have lives and who have things going on in their personal and professional lives. And we bring that to the table too, and really
Right.
connecting with that and how to motivate people, how to encourage, how to walk with people and help them get to the results that they need to do, as your team, part of your team.
Maybe can you share an example of how you're using this? You said this has impacted you over the past 30 years. You know, it seems very clear we're in an middle military setting and you're, amongst your troops, you're, leading beside them, you're understanding. How does that translate now and where you're at in the corporate world, um, at your level of leadership? What does this look like?
I think that's a really good question because when you look at it, you can see it very easily in the military. It plugs and plays very easily. Once you understand it and you put it all together and you can develop it, you get opportunities to develop that every day, if you will, every day you get that opportunity. But I think in when you translate it into civilian life, and we all end up having a civilian life after the military, whether it's a first term enlistment, whether it's your first duty assignment, you fulfill your active duty commitment from the academy, whatever those years are, whether you finish your 20 or what have you, you do transition out of military life at some point in time.
Let's talk about what you're doing right now. I think it's important for us to understand what that looks like and how you're leading in that space.
Oh my gosh, I am so excited about what I'm doing now. It's the best job I've had. It's a great company that I work for. I work for Boingo Wireless, and what I do, my job at the company is to do anything that relates to the military. So we provide connectivity to over 100 bases around the world. I've got an incredible team that many of them have served either as a veteran, retiree, or still serving. You have to understand what they know, what is their background, where have they been, where have they served, so to speak, what companies have they worked in, what leadership roles, what technology have they been around, what schools have they been to, all those things, and then also some of their things that are going on in their personal life, so that you understand what's bringing them to work every day to support their personal and professional goals. And so you have to translate take that military experience and put that into the civilian workforce. And I think it's very powerful. It's so natural. I really actually don't think about it as much because you've developed it such a tried and true part of who your character becomes that coming back to into civilian life and transitioning back into it, it's a great opportunity to bring all of those skill sets and move right into that, in leading teams, in learning the new chain of command, if you will, in corporate, and so that's a really powerful thing, and it feels like it's an enjoyable part of my day, is the
Mm.
people I get to work with, the quality of people I get to work with. If I don't have that connection, I feel like I'm missing something at the end of the day.
Can you share an example in which, to that level that that the senior master sergeant said, did you know what type of car it was, where you've actually got to that level with someone maybe in your civilian career, and how have you seen that actually make an impact on either their performance or the results or really just their own worth?
Well, I think that's a interesting question. I think that can be played in 2 different areas. If you're in the office, there's an ability to be connected just by having lunch together, by having coffee. You're in and you're around and about, and physically, there's just a different kind of energy when you're around people. So my team, we get together at some regular intervals, that we set as a team for the year. We do one big we call it an annual meeting. We're going to Vegas this year,
Oh,
and we're
wonderful.
going in February, and so we're bringing the entire team. Everybody's coming out of the field. Everybody's coming from around the world, and they're all coming. We're meeting in Vegas, and we're gonna spend a couple days together talking about what we accomplished last year, what we're
Mhm.
going to do in the future, and then we also do some learnings and, things like that, some, technology growth opportunities and things like that. So that's one thing that shows that you're going to spend some budget dollars to really ensure that people know how you feel and how you value them as being part of this team, and making sure I spend every other week planning this for a year. And that there's a
Wow.
small of us, and we do that every other week, and we talk about the hotel, we talk about the food, our team building exercises, the agenda, the t-shirts, the design of those, every detail, because I want my team to walk away at the end of that. We'll probably have over 100 people in the room, and I want everyone to walk out of that knowing that they are a valuable member of the team. So that's one thing, we do, on my team, and then on Monday mornings, we have a staff meeting every Monday morning, a team meeting, and the first question of the day is, "What did you do for the weekend?" And that's where we learn about all kinds of, really fun things about people and what they're doing with their family, or who they're, trying to date, or, buying a new house, or all kinds of things that you learn. And then also you develop that within the team because other people hear that question, and otherwise it's very transactional. This is what you do. This is what you can do for me. And in this fast-paced technology world, taking that time at the beginning of the meeting to say, "Let's take a pause, and I wanna hear about you." And so to me, that's another small thing, but a very powerful thing in a fast-paced technology space. I think it's even more critical to take a pause, to take a stop and take a breath and realize the people that we're working with it's a gift to have this opportunity to work with one another, and I want them to feel a part of the team, even though we're in a remote setting
Hmm.
because most of my team is in the field. And so in that remote setting, that is even more critical, I think. So I think there's both, when you're in the office, there's one way to do things. And then when you're in this more remote setting that we are, and then we're in a fast paced technology setting, it's moving all the time. And sometimes you get into more activity and results and activity, and you accomplish one thing and you're on to the next.
Right.
And that's I don't know if that wheel spinning so fast is always, healthy.
Well, I really appreciate how you actually gave very specific examples of this leadership in action because you're right. In this pace and in this remote kind of setting that many of us operate in, being able to still find that human touch and that connection to what you were speaking about that went all the way back to, the senior master sergeant. But I'm sure you also had leaders throughout your military career that also exemplified some of this. Can you share any other moments while you're in uniform where you saw some of these leadership traits that you really wanted to embody and that you've carried through your career to date?
General Hosmer was I think he was the comm when I was at the academy, and he would walk around with his A jacket, so you didn't really know he was a cadet or not because once you put your hat on, you can't tell. But, and, oh my gosh, there's a general just walked past me, but, he knew people's names. He remembered my name, and he remembered it for 4 years, and it was
Wow.
just a powerful moment that I remembered on my graduation when we walked through the line with your parents and you're doing that reception, and he said, "Rebecca, congratulations. It's, well done, and you did great," and all those kinds of, things.
Right.
And I'll never forget that walk, whether he was walking on the terrazzo and called my name, whether he remembered it going through a line of 1,000 people with all their parents and, all of that. And I think that's always stuck with me, that level of remembering somebody's name, remembering who they are. That really was powerful to me early on in my military career.
Oh, thank you for sharing that because those are the moments that so many people can connect with that really do imprint on them and how they are as leaders, and I'm curious because
That's a good
you
word,
shared.
imprint. That's a really good
Yes,
word,
it
imprint.
it
Yeah.
feels that way. Yes, thank you, thank you. You know, I would love to dive into your Air Force career and the decision to transition out because I just imagine, in the way that you have done so many incredible things that your time in the military was very successful. Can you talk about what that was and then the decision to transition, why that came about, and why you made it?
That's a very powerful decision. It's a big decision to come into the military, and it's a big decision when it's time to leave. And those are hard decisions. And sometimes you leave too early, sometimes you stay in too long, different things like that. But for me, it was my husband was a 93 grad, so I'm 94. He was 93. We got married at the cadet chapel right after I graduated in September. I share that because my husband and I were dual spouse, joint spouse. We were just talking about it the other day, because we just celebrated it was our 31st wedding anniversary, and we looked at it and we said, "Gosh, what a ride we've had," and we got to know each other. We were in the same cadet squadron. We were both in, 29 for 3
Okay.
years and sophomore through senior year. And we both looked at each other. We were going to get separated. I was gonna do a remote to Korea. He was going to, Maelstrom in Montana, and my follow-on was Vegas at Nellis. And so, we realized we were gonna be separated for a few years, and that was a really big decision for us because we loved the military, we loved our lifestyle, we loved our friends, we loved the camaraderie and all the things that you love, and we realized, where does that fit with our marriage and how do we pull this off? And so I think along the way, we've really tried to drive a commitment to service. We both went off active duty. We decided to go into the reserves together. And then I eventually went into the Guard. So I ended up serving active duty Guard and reserves, which was really, it wasn't done. back in the
No, I was
day.
gonna say that
No,
is not the
no,
norm at
that was
all.
not done. I mean, you stay active duty for 20 years, you
Right.
stay reserves. You might do active duty and then reserves, but to finish up and get to your 20,
Right.
but I had 3 little children, and so I was able to do the reserves. And so I think what's great about the military is if you are open to looking at your career and seeing it as a different stages and phases of your life and letting it shape and form around that too. There's ways to serve. That was the way I felt called to serve. I think other people, active duty is the way to go, or reserves or guard is the way to go, straight through. But for me, it gave me the flexibility, and I found that it was a lot of fun to do it that way. I got to learn different things in each of the different statuses, if you will, and I was able to put a whole career together, with 3 little kids and, 31 years of marriage.
Well, I think as a leader, those decision points, and it sounds like you were really well grounded in, what do we want to commit to, right? We have commitment to service, a commitment to each other. But I think what is so special about your career when you look at it in seasons or in stages is you've had some incredible opportunities to still continue to thrive professionally, even as those stages change. And if you wouldn't mind sharing some of that, because I think there's times when listeners feel like if my trajectory is not vertical, like in one path that, that everyone kind of recognizes as the path, then it's not successful. But to your point, if you look at it in stages and what is this stage? How do I evolve in this stage and this stage? And maybe it's not always directly vertical, but we're still moving in it at an angle. I think it's powerful for our listeners to hear if you don't mind sharing what that's been like.
I made a very intentional decision to serve as a squadron commander at a certain season. So I wanted to build a life that had different components to it. And to do that, that meant you have to be intentional about that if you want to stay on one path. And I think as this world gets more complex, the technology is moving very fast. You want to stay balanced. I think the only way you can stay balanced in life is to really have different components of your life. There's a time to be a squadron commander. There's a time to be a senior leader. There's a time to be an individual contributor. And there's a time to say this is, for whatever myriad of reasons, health or family dynamics, or you're going through a degree program. And so you have to kind of make those things to ebb and flow appropriately. And I wanted to put those building blocks and pieces together to make something really interesting and a reason to wake up in the morning and something that got me out of bed. I do squadron officer school, I do, ACSC and then war college. And so you can end up checking these boxes and checking, different assignments and different levels. Just like you graduate from college, you got to meet certain, credit requirements and different kinds of classes and things like that. So I'm not saying it's a negative, but it shouldn't be a mindset. It should be just the way you need to get certain things done. So
And by the way, Sergeant Kenny would come back and be like, this is not enough, ma'am. So but you know what I really loved about what you just described? This might be the first time I've heard the description of balance because you did it in a way that you talked about balance being almost having a holistic view of various pillars. And there's times when, you're bringing one to the forefront. So you're not ever saying they're in balance where they're all,
no.
equitable or like everything is just, the scale is exactly the same on both sides. But what you're saying is there's time when you're bringing stuff to the forefront, but I'm really aware of all of those pieces. And I think that is such a wonderful way to look at balance, which brings me to this question of, you have approached your career and, being a mother and a wife was such, a unique view. When did you know it was time to add onto your plate in this nonprofit space? And then going, so it just seems like you've made these decisions at critical points. How do you measure when that next point is supposed to come around and you take that leap?
Sometimes life gives you that opportunity to take a step back and say, okay, I'm now at a critical juncture. What do I want to do?
Mm.
That can be your health or a family dynamic, or you get accepted into a program and you want to do this. When I got accepted into that Secretary of Defense Corporate Fellowship Program, that's basically Air War College in Residence. You can imagine doing Air War College in Residence as a Guard member was very prestigious, an incredible opportunity, and then they sucked me into this fellowship opportunity, but that really changed my trajectory because at the time I was in nonprofit, and it pulled me out, put me back in uniform for 1 year. That was a 1-year commitment to do War College, in that capacity, and then it was after that I decided to move into corporate. And so I think there's certain times when you get those moments, and what I think is people race through those. I think they race through that moment, and instead to take a stop and a pause, and say, "Do I wanna make a change at this moment? Do I wanna do this?" I really didn't wanna make that change. I didn't wanna come out of nonprofit at the time. I didn't wanna do War College in residence. I didn't want to do some of those things, and instead, I took it and I said, "I don't know where this is heading, um, but I'm okay with where this is gonna go." And I don't think sometimes you need to know all those pieces before you make those decisions, and I think, because then if you need that, you're never gonna have it. I mean, you
Mm,
just don't.
that's right.
Um, and so for me, it's always a moment where you stop and you say, "This is an opportunity for me to change where I live, to change my career, to change a family dynamic. Do you add another kid? Do you stop at 3? What do you do?" I think what I have tried to really do is stop and really have it. Like, really I really take
Intentionally, it
it.
sounds like.
Really
Yes.
take that moment and have that moment and say, "This is a moment for me to say is what do I need to change? What do I wanna change? Or nothing. I keep going?" But I have made that decision.
Well, what I'm hearing from that is a level of confidence in yourself that you've probably developed over time, from, the different interactions you've had from, I mean, wearing so many hats has probably actually given you, a stronger confidence in what you're able to accomplish, what your capacity is when you don't really know what you know, um, what's all around you, so to speak. You don't have all the answers. Can we talk a little bit about when you knew that or when you recognized that in yourself? Because when you made those decisions and you said you walked through those doors with your eyes wide open, you're essentially betting on yourself, right? You have built this trust and confidence in your ability. Can you talk about what that looks like, how you came to that? Because I think there's times where our listeners have this doubt, this self doubt. So let's talk about that.
If you have good people around you, you ask for good advice, you have I think a faith that can ground you, and you know that you've been given these gifts and this skill set, and you've made certain mile markers in life. I think it just builds over time.
Would you say that you recognized, I guess, betting on yourself and confidence in yourself early in the years when you started diving and recognized, wow, this is scary, but okay, right? Or was it more developed later?
So I started diving when I was 10, and, I would be up there on the diving board. I was a little 10-year-old, and sometimes you couldn't walk down the board. You were terrified. My coach would sit there and she would say, "Okay, we're gonna go. 1, 2, 3," and you go. You learn how to walk down that diving board, and you learn how to do things that you're not really confident on, and you're not really but once you master it, it's really fun. It's probably from I think diving
Mm.
athletics, I think, does that to you. Whether you're chasing that soccer ball and you gotta go up against somebody bigger, whether you're in football and you gotta go up against my husband was a fullback at
Oh
the
my
Air
goodness.
Force Academy, and so he went up against linemen at Notre Dame and Ohio State and things like that,
Mhm.
and he goes, "It was terrifying," and so but when the whistle blows and the play call's called, you go, and so you develop that strength somehow along the way to push through.
How have you developed those that have come under your care as a leader that maybe didn't have that athletic background? How do you teach them that? How do you instill in them that go mentality that, you know, fear is just your body's response, get your blood, your blood flowing. How do you do that as a leader?
I think you do it by going out ahead and standing out there, and maybe you're the only one out there, so to speak, ahead of the team, in believing whatever direction you need to go, whatever new business direction you need to go in, or what new product line you need to develop, or what new revenue goals you need to accomplish, and you have to go out there and you've got to do it yourself. I'm probably more of a working leader than a leader that manages. I'm not the best manager, if you will, but I can get out in front. But I think for me, it's just been leading out and ahead, going out there and saying, this is the direction, building that conversation across the team leaders to make sure we're aligned, to make sure we're thinking the same thing. Are you reading the market the way I'm reading the market? Are you reading some of these leadership decisions within the industry that we're reading it? Are we seeing this the same way? Bouncing those ideas off and then developing that movement and that groundswell to really go for it.
I want to ask you this question that's tied to this idea of understanding your capacity, your capabilities, your talents, your strengths, betting on yourself, and how you've been able to do that while you still successfully have a 31-year right? Like a marriage and a family that has to also buy into those decisions. What does that look like as a leader when you're making those decisions? When you have children and a family or a spouse, how do you navigate that when they also have their goals?
Oh, it's so deep. It's so deep because
And it's real
when
because this is what they're facing, all of our
yeah.
leaders are facing these questions.
It is. You're facing these decisions back at,
Mhm.
at home and what you've gotta manage at home. My husband and I really lead, and we lead by example that we take care of our business and we do our things. And as soon as the girls were able to do a lot of things for themselves, we gave them that responsibility. That really helped. I think, your kids are pretty capable and they're really strong and they're very, smart and they're wise and they can feel the energy in the room. They can feel your commitment to them.
Well, I mean, I think what I heard through all that as well is having those values aligned like you do, and then really communicating, and then just um, championing the responsibility and the capabilities of your family members. It seems like, you don't only just do that at work, but what I'm hearing is you've done this and the home life as well, and it's continued to just really evolve your family in such a beautiful way. So, thank you for sharing that with us because I think that's really powerful. And sometimes when our listeners feel like, "Gosh, I don't know how to make this decision." I think if you start from that place of, "Are we aligned? Do we know what our core,
Mhm.
pieces," and then go from there. It seems like you've been able to navigate that really well. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I wanna ask you, something that you're doing every day because as leaders and I'm not sure what your thoughts are on this, maybe you share, but a lot of people will talk about how I'm always learning, I'm continuing to learn. Even as a leader, I'm still learning every day. Can you share if that's how you feel? And, if so, what are you doing on a daily basis to just be a better version of yourself, um, as a leader, professional, etcetera?
I think when you work out and you get a really good workout and whatever that is, walking or, at the gym or lifting or whatever that is, biking or swimming, I think for me that exercise and reading, those are probably the 2 things that I really work a lot on and making sure that's just part of the day. A lot of times we don't have to think too much about eating because we get hungry, but,
Yes.
once you start exercising a lot and you read a lot and you have that quiet time, when you don't have it, you miss it, and so
Mm.
you almost get hungry for it, and so to create that consistency, so you can create that hunger if you do skip it or you wanna skip it. Even when I travel for work, I do
Mhm.
it. The girls know that if we're in a hotel, I'm gonna go run down to the gym for a little bit. They'll come with me or not, but, that's something I'm gonna do regardless, and then the reading is really, really critical.
One of the things we also love to ask, and maybe this is a better way to ask it, is if you were to give advice to your daughters on what they could do today to be better leaders for tomorrow, what would that be?
I don't know if it's a goal to be a leader, but I think it's a goal to develop and be really well-rounded, really solid, because you will default to being the leader if you have that strength, you have that intellectual capacity, you have the humility. But I think having that humility is really, really critical. The well-roundedness, having different aspects to your life. It can't all be just school and homework, and it needs to be whatever that is, music or athletics or, you know, um, what have you in your faith community or something. You've
Mhm.
gotta have a well-rounded because things come and go in your life.
Well, I love how you really put that together because I think the key thing was, I don't know that they're necessarily aspiring to be a leader, but if they aspire to be well-rounded and that kind of a wholesome um, approach, they will be the leader in the room. And I just love that because it just makes it so clear, right? I thought that was incredible. Well, we're coming up at our time, and I just have loved this conversation. Is there anything we didn't cover that you just like? This is a time like we want to make sure we didn't miss anything that you would like to share.
What you're really focused on is, really powerful, and connecting the alumni, connecting the families so that they understand what their child is going through at the academy is really important. Realizing there's life out of the academy and you still need to serve and you still need to contribute. And there's a lot of lessons that we had at those 4 critical years of our life that can
Right.
carry us. And I think you're really highlighting that and giving us the space to share some of that. So really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I just have to share with our listeners, what I've really taken away from today's conversation is that leadership begins in small moments, a cup of coffee, a conversation, choosing to listen. But it grows through courage, the courage to step into uncertainty, which you've done, to serve where others maybe wouldn't, and to believe in your path. Even if it looks unconventional, it has
Yeah, even
purpose.
if it looks even if it looks
That's
unconventional, that's
right.
okay. It's okay
Yes,
too.
yes, and I love that you talked about how it wasn't about the titles, but it was really about the experiences and kind of having that full picture of you and the confidence to bet on yourself. So this has just been a privilege to be with you on Long Blue Leadership. I want to thank everyone for listening to this Long Blue Leadership episode. If you know others that are really growing in their leadership journeys and could benefit from this, please share it with them. We love having all of you listen to these wonderful lessons on leadership from our Air Force Academy graduates. So Rebecca, again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will see you another time, but for now, I'm Naviere Walkewicz, class of '99. Thanks for joining us.